room 316, and we will begin now our session titled Unlocking the True Value of Your Data. Here we have our moderator who will be introducing our speakers, or they could be introducing themselves. Eric Ferguson from Wilson Bank and Trust. Let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
So a little bit about myself. I've been in banking a little over 30 years, managed data in 35 countries. The only real differences are language and legal. The bits and bytes are about the same. So given that, I've been in Standard Chartered, Bank of America, now more recently Wilson Bank and Trust, to where we are working on some of the same problems that you're probably working through. So given that, I'll give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Sorry, I'm Raghu Vate. I am the field CTO for Ai4. We at Ai4 help our customers on their AI journey, bringing AI into their enterprise workflows. Now, these enterprise workflows can be legacy workflows or like new age workflows, but most of them start with the legacy workflows and then they start to create more and more insights that becomes their moat from the data that they have. Okay. And that is the reason I think today's discussion is going to be very relevant. Hopefully we'll have some questions towards the end. Looking forward to it.
Hello everybody. Hope you're having a great time in Las Vegas. Is it hot enough for you? They asked that in the keynote. I wasn't in there, but figured the heat is the story, right? I'm Kelly Parker. I am from Fivetran. Fivetran is, if you don't know Fivetran, we're all about moving data. We're my data movement shirt. We help organizations get data for AI and analytics projects into data warehouses and data lakes. And we do it at a very large scale from any source into any great analytics or AI destination. Really looking forward to talking to you today.
Yeah, my name is Frank Katman. I am working for Deutsche Bank, the biggest German bank. We are located in Frankfurt. In Germany. There I am working with a team just building the data platform just for collecting and managing data of the different departments, making it available for the business users, collaborate on use cases. Before this position, I was working also for other bigger German banks, including also the central bank, building all the big data platforms.
My name is Chris Bartlett. I am the Associate Chief Data Sciences Officer for Nationwide Children's Hospital in the healthcare industry. That's my enterprise hat. I'm also a faculty at the Ohio State University and professor of pediatrics, and so I have the innovation hat. We do a lot of work on vision models and foundational frontier models in that space. But I'm here today to talk mostly about the governance and the enterprise hat that I wear. As a faculty at Ohio State, I do have to say that I brought some Ohio State Buckeye candies with me. I passed them out to the panel earlier. And if you ask a question in this panel, you can come up here and grab yourself a Buckeye. So please do so.
No comment. All right, let's start off with the first question. So how are you or your customers successfully transforming raw data into real business or organizational impact? In no particular order, because some of you are helping and some of you are using. So who would like to start with that?
I can go.
Go ahead, please.
So it depends on the customer. So what we are seeing is that everyone has a different requirement and the different goal, and more importantly a different timeline in terms of when they want to achieve these goals. So when we look at our federal customers versus our very large banks versus mid-sized banks or financial organizations, or going down one tier and looking at smaller organizations, smaller companies, what we have seen is that everyone has come to realize that their real moat is the data that they own. Okay. It is about the data that they own, and they want to be able to first of all get the most value out of the data, but also making sure that they have something unique that their competitors cannot provide, or they have something unique that their customers are going to look towards. And what we have seen is that when you go on that journey, there is everything from the quality of the data to the consumption layer where your insights from the data are shown to your customers, right, or your end users. And when you go on that journey, you have to they are, depending on the size of the company, their risk profile, risk management, all of those things also change. Some of them are very, very aggressive. What we find is the smaller the organization, they are very aggressive and they are thinking about security, they are thinking about data governance, like what we were talking about earlier. They are thinking about it as an afterthought. And let me first get something and then I'll think about it. And as we grow and go up the chain, and federal being the other extreme, they are okay, I need to solve all of these issues first before I can get to the outcome. And what we are seeing is it's both sides are the two ends of the pendulum, two ends of the spectrum, and it is very hard to convince somebody who is very, very conservative to take very aggressive actions. At the same time, it's also very hard to convince somebody who wants a answer tomorrow to tell them that okay, you have to slow down. This is going to hurt you in the long term. You have to do 5 different things before you get to that outcome, right? So when balancing this and giving them enough tools so that they don't paint themselves into a corner while traversing this is the challenge. And I see that whoever is able to provide a good solution for that is going to be able to help these customers or these solutions or these scenarios come to life.
Yeah, so you're building the foundation before you actually can start to monetize the data. Obviously a very important step. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I could emphasize, in a financial institution, the customer is always in focus. Yeah, everything what is developed is just with the target of getting customer satisfaction. Of course, there are private companies that want to earn money, but through offering to customer satisfaction, offering the best products and services. And we are seeing in the last years technology is evolving very quickly. We get new methods of collecting data, of processing data, and also new means of interacting with the customer. And the banks are just utilizing these new technologies to approach the customer and offer always better services. To get the customer satisfied to achieve customer satisfaction. And the use cases that are developed just utilize these new technologies. For instance, 2 examples: developing chatbots that have access to real time to private customer data when interacting with the customer is more friendly because that traditional forms of dealing with customers in branches, because it's always available 24/7 and not only open during branch or opening hours, and also through real-time analysis of customer data, the bank is able to provide a better tailored, a more user-friendly product that it was before, just with traditional segmentation of the market. That could be an example. And another one, I think quickly, is financial client, for instance, just analyzing in real-time data, monitoring the market to avoid fraudulent transactions. So we are utilizing the technology just to enhance customer experience, better decision making, better market risk, and operational efficiency. So these are 2 examples of how we are utilizing the technology.
facing right now in extracting or operationalizing data value? You want to start?
Yeah. So one of the things that we see all the time as it relates to this is that there's a long backlog in IT and data engineering to get to the data. It's not that it's impossible. It's not that it's even super challenging. The problem is that it's locked away into a database, and the database is constantly changing, and getting new data in there, and to get that data into whatever medallion architecture or method that's going to be used for getting access to that data and doing something operationally with it. And overcoming that challenge of speed and creating inertia within the data team to get that data that they need.
Anybody want to add anything to that? Or?
I can go for it. So, double plus good on that comment. Getting to the data is hugely important. But I want to throw something out because this is the right room to hear it. One thing that hinders adoption of AI in getting value is something that some of the service companies are doing to enterprise people, such as myself. So we get access to the data. Big hurdle. We finally got it. We validate a process. Great. I'm using an API. I'm using a model that's fixed. It's API. Then in 6 months they say, well, we're not going to allow you to keep using that API anymore. You should use a better model. We all know AI is getting better over time, but for any niche purpose, it might be getting worse. And this is exactly what we've seen. Giving continued access to a model that is invalidated for the next 3 years saves me a lot of money. If you force me to revalidate every 6 months or a year, you might be eating into my profits, in which case it's no longer a useful project. And so we just wouldn't adopt AI for that. So I think that's something that I find a challenge. It's not the biggest challenge, admittedly, but it's something that, folks in this room, somebody has influence over this. This is something enterprise needs, and it isn't really being addressed fully at the moment.
Can I add something to that? Please. Okay, before I add something, I did not see that question. Like, I did not ask him to say those things. But what I think is, like, this is a real important problem to solve. But for the viability and the return of investment, especially in the enterprise space. And I don't like pitch my own company when we are having this panel, but that is exactly the reason why we started Ai4. Because you cannot go on one hand and say like, okay, give me a model that is static for the next 3 years. In this age of like AI innovation, it is going to change. You want it to change because otherwise the next model is going to be here better than this one, or the next version is going to be here. Now, how do you have your cake and eat it? Okay, so those are the kind of problems that are being solved right now, and like I do think like there is a good chance that like your wish is going to come true in a near future too. And we are not the only ones working on it. There are a lot of other companies who are solving this problem, because for me there are 3 big hurdles that are in the way of adapting the data. The first one is about data governance, and like I think like there are people who are more qualified than me to talk about data governance on this panel. I'll look to you. The second one is about having that continuous stream of data and being able to like get the newer data, not the stale data. Because in AI is not only about training the model, but it is also about inference. At the end of the day, you're doing all of that so that you can get an inference and the insights out of that. And especially when we're talking about enterprises, you're also talking about the new data that is generated on a continuous basis. You want to use that data as a context for your insights, right? So what that means is that like if you don't have that data pipeline, if you don't have that same level of scrutiny and discipline in those areas, then your insights are not good enough, or they are only as good as the data and the data quality that you provide, right? So that is one. And the last one I would want to say is like, it's about how do you surface those insights too. Because somebody who is living in the data world is can look at it. I mean, for example, I know like you live in the quality and data world, right? You look at, I go and tell you like, hey, I have implemented my stack like this. You're like, oh, this is great, this is not good. But somebody who is not living in the data world and who just cares about like, how do I see those insights? Is it relevant to me? Can I give feedback in the right way? Those are the kind of things that like are not there yet. And people look at ChatGPT. It has captured their imagination, and they are going to say, hey, if ChatGPT can do it, why can't I do it? Right? So those are the kind of hurdles that we need to cross. But I think that is you brought up a really good point. That is a real big hurdle right now. But thankfully there are like some real good companies working to solve this problems.
Great, thank you. Real quick, and I guess this is the bigger question that many of us have gone through. It's when did you see something that went wrong? How did you identify it? And then how did you fix it? And then move forward. And I'm sure all of you have had a bad experience of some sort. So, somebody want to try a bad experience? I've had many myself.
Maybe I could start with just
Yeah,
a
sure.
real simplistic one. And the bad experience may be just me that had a bad experience because of what I'll perceive as a lack of data governance, and it was around revenue. So I'm in sales, and revenue is of course one of the key things that we're focused on. But as a SaaS-based company and a usage-based company, revenue takes on a lot of different forms in the way that it can be calculated based on monthly revenue, annual revenue, contract value, usage, outstanding usage, and having done some early analysis on some of our data, and I'll go through the exact finding, but it was learning that there were at least 12 different definitions of revenue within our company, which one was the appropriate one, and then modifying not only the analytics that we were putting together, the outcome that we were going for, and then ultimately our mindset shift and attitude on finding that were all kinds of key things that I found out that I had to experience. What did I learn from it? As it relates to governance and data, go to the source as quickly as you can, and when you find that you've made a mistake, take action as quick as you can.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun one. The one I experienced was a little bit more extreme because it ended up in the stock analysts with a public company, and it wasn't an error that we made, but we inherited. And yeah, hindsight's 2020. So looking ahead, where do you see the biggest value from unlocking data, and from your sector in particular, as well as potentially even others that you might be looking at? You want to start? Frank, go ahead.
Yes, in our case, or in the financial industry, I think the biggest opportunities just in leveraging the data analytics technologies and strategic data management, just to enhance customer experience, mentioned it before, decision making, risk management, operational efficiency. And going to the technology itself, the opportunities are in leveraging scalable cloud-native applications, for instance, that can react quickly, flexible, that use containerized technologies, Kubernetes, that can react flexible according to market needs, can scale quickly, and also facilitate integration across departments. And that is a challenge that I see, I mentioned before, but just breaking the silos in the business departments can appear, because you want to use data for building your model, but you need quality data, and this is a measure. And other points could be just utilizing real-time data, analyzing real-time data, just to give the customer in real time, to introduce, to utilize AI when in the processes of the bank. There's augmented analytics, predictive analytics, just utilizing these new technologies in the bank. This is the opportunities that we have, and also creating new products that are specific for the needs of the customer. Just reacting in real time to the requests of the customer. Banks are even implementing bots and doing some kind of emotional and behavioral analysis, and it's amazing. Not in my case, but I'm reading it from the industry. And depending on how the customer reacts and what her specific needs are in this any day, then he gets specific products offer just to enhance customer satisfaction. Other points, could be just omni-channel consistency, because new technologies open new doors to get in contact with the customer, to implement communication with the customer, and it's important that he gets always the same communication through mobile apps, in the branch, through websites, so omni-channel consistency. And at the end, of course, security and data governance is very important, just to enhance trust from customers.
What about from the healthcare perspective? Do you see anything? The opportunity seems vast there, obviously.
Hospitals are big bundles of fixed costs. We're very reliant on humans for things, so there's a lot of opportunities here. And I think in the healthcare space, everybody recognizes that opportunity, which is great. So there's a lot of general support for something. Anything specific, of course, needs to be discussed thoroughly. But one thing I find that, my computer science world that I live in, we love to talk about, let's replace radiologists and let's do something big. And that's great as a motivator, but ROI doesn't come from something like that necessarily. If you can do something about as well as a human and faster, that's ROI. You don't have to get rid of a radiologist, just make them work faster, and suddenly you've got return on investment. So I think from the healthcare perspective, the talk in the tech world really isn't as boots on the ground as it ought to be in the healthcare space, because there's so much we can do just to improve human efficiency that's going to get us return on investment, and it doesn't necessarily mean replace radiologists, replace physicians, replace nurses, that kind of thing. Hey, I'm looking forward to the day when there's lots of robots actually doing wound care and all that kind of stuff, but in the short term, we can do so much with what's already there. And to me, that's where we like to put our focus on, is let's get the ROI now, so my CAO is my friend in 6 years, rather than try to do something big and fail at it.
Sure. Great. So moving on, if you could change one thing about how organizations approach data today, what would it be? And you want to start from the 5-trend perspective, because the ETL process is obviously the beginning.
So let me take a little different approach though. There was a recent article in CIO magazine where they surveyed executives and they surveyed doers on AI, and they said, how efficient is your organization using AI? The executives were like, we are awesome, we're doing it. We have AI mastered, we're using it in all parts of our business, and the rest of us were like, no way, dude, we're not using it, we're skeptical. I don't know anything about this. And there's a chasm here between what the executive team dreams about. We were talking about this, about the executives, like, why not more? I see them down the street doing it, why are we doing it? Versus the people that are getting it are responsible to put it in place, or responsible to use it, or have the fear of their job going away. And whatever realm that might manifest itself into, I think there's from data and and really making the most of data and AI as we go forward, bridging that gap between the executive perspective and the rest of our perspective, and having a vision for what this AI revolution, like the agricultural revolution we went through 100-something years ago, manifests itself for people like us who are out here and maybe replaced.
John Deere's going to look very differently soon.
Yeah. So if I may add one thing, right? What I would like to see is that like whenever people are talking about data, they are especially people who are curating the data and everything, they're looking at how can my next application use this data to get the best of value out of it. And usually it is not an end application. There are like three other tools that come into the picture before the end result of that data comes in. And over the past couple of decades, like we have been doing a lot of data mining, and there is a lot of data sitting out there which people do not really know what is the best value of it. So, and again, like to your previous question too, the way the trend, the Uber trend right now is that people are not thinking about replacing people by AI yet, at least, but they are definitely thinking about replacing tools. They are saying this data is not going to go into an Excel. I mean, I'm just speaking Excel now, but like I don't really need an Excel to like create a pivot chart for me so that some other BI tool can look at it and then give me an insight. And if I can ask the data or wherever my data is, hey, give me that insight, and it gives me that insight, then why do I need these two tools in the middle, right? So we see that trend quite a bit, and it is just beginning, by the way, but I do see that like a lot of the tools, either they have to evolve or they will be, it's not even replaced, they will just go out of existence because there is no real need for those tools anymore because you are able to get the data. But one thing I would like to see for the data is that people need to start thinking about data as a source that can give them insights, not as a data as a source that will help the first tool in the tool chain. And when you start thinking about it, then the way you curate data, the way you preserve it, the way you govern it, all of those things become different. Because just like what you were talking about yesterday, right? Like data is data, but now the data in Singapore is completely different from data in the US, and the rules that govern those are completely different. Just because you use a tool in Singapore doesn't mean you need to use a different tool. But if you can eliminate the need of those tools, then all of a sudden the number of hurdles to get to that outcome which is universal becomes like smaller. So that is something that is very good.
Yeah, and I'll just add my own personal hot button is that Excel is not a database. So everybody knows.
I think two more opinions. This is a really good
Yeah,
question.
please, yes.
So I'd like to push things down even to a more granular level because I love everything you've said so far for sure. I would like everyone in my organization to realize they are a data person, right? Because right now, folks, how does a frontline worker develop opinions? They see what works, they see what doesn't work, and over time that becomes their opinion of things. They're collecting data whether they realize it or not, and having more folks engaged in thinking about how they're forming their opinions and how they're collecting data. When you speak to them, how can I make your job more efficient? If they're more data oriented, they can come back and give me a question that I can convert more easily into a data science operation, right? If it's too abstract and too conceptual, we have to spend a lot of time digging. And so I think if we got more people in the organization thinking in terms of, I'm collecting data, I'm learning about this because of this, just give them the vocabulary and sort of that extra sort of change in viewpoint. And I think our interactions would be a lot more specific early on, because defining a question into data science terms is a really hard problem. And the folks that we interact with have no experience with that. So I would like to convert everyone to a data person. I think that would just be immensely helpful.
I also would like to add something. Maybe to get the most value of the data, companies should begin just defining what they want to reach with data. Just beginning with specifying products and services they want to offer to the customer, and defining business goals, objectives, and then a data strategy. And then align this data strategy with the business goals. just to build the products, AI, whatever they want to offer to the customer. Because currently, or in some cases, we have technology-centric mindset. Some companies are just investing in technology and collecting data just for the sake of it, without defining business goals. At some point, and the other thing I also think is important is just considering data or treating data as a continuously managed product. So with a catalog, we should know which data we have in the company, just to use it correctly, with data owners, with quality metrics, and release cycles, and long-term development targets. Yeah.
Okay, great. So one of the biggest decisions that you're going to have to make as an owner is to what technologies are you going to use? And some of that is foundational, some of that is centered around security, some of that is going to be specific to the industry that you're in. So how do you go about deciding that, which ones you choose? I mean, you can walk through the vendor showcase out here, and there's many, many choices obviously out there. How do you go through that decision-making process, and maybe start in the healthcare space and see, how do you think about that to start?
So it's an interesting question. I was just on a call not too long ago with a bunch of CTOs and CEOs that we get together and have a discussion periodically, and people were asking, do you still test all the different AI models out there, all the different LLMs for your application? And most people admitted that they had to stop because it's happening too fast. You can't compare them all the time. You just have to make a decision and go with it. And so I think when it comes to the tool, I mean, beg, borrow, steal, anything that works is what works. I think the security folks are where, in healthcare, in the privacy folks, that's where the really tough conversations happen. And so they say, we like this model, but it comes from a source that we're not happy with. We need to be super careful, put it in a container, and you'll probably never get permission to use it in production. That's fine. I'm happy to live in that world. But for the most part, the academic side of our organization is very much into if it's published, if it's out there, if it's open source, even if it's closed source, let's find a way to use it if it solves a problem.
And jokingly, we were talking earlier about my chief information security officer. I have to feed him blood pressure medication every once in a while because I'm a little worried about him being fearful of what we choose. But anybody want to add to that, like the way you approach the tool decision?
The tool decision is again. I'll go back to the same thing about your sister, right? Like hopefully he gets his blood pressure medication. It also depends on the people who are helping him out. Okay, not everyone has somebody who is as experienced as you to actually help them out, and also the people around them who are skilled enough to make the right decisions at the right time. And it is about the time, especially when it comes to security, and especially when it comes to governance. If you corrupt the data, if you take the data, then it takes so much more to bring it back to a pristine state. But more importantly, it is also about giving these people enough tools to actually do their job. And to your point earlier, it's very hard to expect somebody to form a very good question, almost like a data scientist, so that they can get the right insights, right? And your insights that you are going to get are only going to be as good as the question that you are going to ask. Okay. And the next trend, which is again, this is an AI conference, I have to talk about agentic. But the thing is, the next trend that we are seeing, which is actually, I do believe that this is the right trend, is that why should somebody ask a question? You have your data, okay? And there are experts that are going to talk about how you can categorize the data, how you can actually curate the data. But then it is also about the models and the models that are using the data. Instead of you going and asking, tell me something, what if the model is able to go to the data, look at it and say, hey, I see a discrepancy, I see an anomaly, I see something that you need to look at. Especially in the security field, because there is so much of it that you need a huge team to like even keep up with what is happening today, and like not everyone can afford it. So what you need is the data that is able to tell you like what it is rather than you asking that question to that. And I see that trend happening, and it is actually, I mean, it's still not there, but we are going in the right path towards that. And it's not far off too, like I'm pretty sure in a year or two, if we are having the same discussion, we are not going to be talking about like, hey, what is the question I need to ask? What is it? It's like, okay, how is that better than the other? The tooling is going to elevate to a different level where now your data is telling you stuff. And now your job is to like make sure that the data that is telling you is the correct data, is the curated data, is the one that you trust. And at that point, this tooling, again, I go back to the same tooling that like some of them will just go extinct for a good reason. But the new tools that are coming up are things that are going to like tell you like what your data wants to tell you rather than the other way around.
One last thing that we're seeing is with AI and kind of thinking through vibe coding, will there be as many business tools that are available for us built? I kind of think back to like you're talking about Hadoop and big data and built on commodity hardware and open source technologies and DIY. And if you were a vendor in that space during that time, you're like, wow, we've already gone through this in the data warehouse revolution. Now we're going through it again in the big data revolution. And I speak from experience because we had a business tool that we were using. It didn't meet all of our needs. Like, well, let's put together a prototype of what we think that we would want, so then we know what we're looking for. It took months to code. But then version 2, through vibe coding, when we had our requirements, it was done in 40 hours. So I think there is going to be this decision point of build versus buy when you can build through vibe coding just so easily. You don't have to have really any expertise except in the application itself.
Great. So we've exhausted the prepared questions. And so now there's an opportunity for you to ask the questions. I think there was candy involved as well, if you so choose to. But do you have a microphone ready? Yes, please. And can you direct the question to who you think would be best to decide?
This question is, I think, probably for Christopher and Frank in particular. You talked a little bit about the difficulty when you have new versions of a model and having to then revalidate those models. But in some contexts, it's very important to have models that are either continuously trained or their life cycle is really short for some reason. And so in the context of a highly regulated entity that is required to validate the models that they're using or that their vendors are using, what are the things that can be done to enhance, speed up, automate the process of a highly regulated entity to be comfortable with these models that may change more often? So just to give a little bit more detail about some of those things, right? You could, for example, let's go beyond LLMs and let's just talk about other models that may be returning just true faults on categorizing fraud data or a malicious request of some kind, right? You could set things like precision, recall, and whatnot in order to be able to say, hey, these are our thresholds, right? Those are just some examples of sort of what I'm curious about, but really this is intended to be open-ended about what you find would be the most helpful, or if it's just not really an option.
Do you want to start, Mark? I'd be interested in hearing the contrast and finding out. Fantastic question. In healthcare, we have a long runway to get things in front of patients or in front of doctors and providers. That's a good thing, right? So we have a model, we let it run silently in the background for say 6 months, so we can collect enough data to make sure that it's really functioning the way we want it to. We might have 1 or 2 physicians who have access to that model in those 6 months to make sure that they're agreeing that it seems to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then we can make it go live in front of additional physicians or the entire hospital, something like that. That piece really shouldn't go away in healthcare. This is part of regulations, part of legal liability, and just common sense as to what you want to put in front of a patient. So I think that's not going anywhere. But for me, if I've got a 6-month ramp to get something new out there, then I have validation that happens prior to that. If models change every 6 months, it's completely out of sync with what I need to deploy something routinely. And so I agree with you. I think continuous deployment, LLMs are a special case, but any model that I can fine tune and has a half-life that's longer, it helps me get more ROI, because good enough is, right? Fit for purpose is what quality is, right? And so once you hit that, it's about as good as a human, and it makes obvious mistakes that are easy to pick. That right there is just worth its weight in gold. And the need to mess with that, you can say the model's better, but is it better for what I need? No. And so I think that's kind of a mindset. Now, I agree with what we're hearing in this panel. Other areas of the world don't think the way we do, because they have a little bit more freedom. But I've got a couple runways that I can't make them shorter. And to try to make them shorter, I'm not sure that's in everyone's best interest in the healthcare space. And so we tend to shy away from that. I think there are niche places where you can get around that a little bit more, especially if it's a similar model. There's already been a lot of trust built up. I mean, there's probably ways to adjust that a little bit, but it's not going to go to zero. And so I think continuous improvement might not be where we want to sit for certain applications in terms of decision support. In other places, like if you talk about robotic surgery or something like that, I can see a lot more continuous integration being completely viable and completely helpful. But in other places, I'm not quite sure it works well with the sort of where we're at from a regulatory perspective. But open to new ideas, and it sounds like AI2's got some thoughts on this too. So yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody who can help us with that.
Hey, real quick, sorry, we have 5 minutes, so do you mind if we take one more? And we can actually meet you in the back as well, if you want to go into more detail on one of them.
And we'll have buckets.
And then he has communities. So, do you mind if we
Yeah,
jump
very quickly, outside in the financial industry, you mentioned it, it's a very highly regulated industry, and because of this, still existing insecurities when using LLMs. In my specific case, we are developing them, but still not offering these products to the broad public outside. They are being tested internally, and we are monitoring behavior, and of course there's the institution for it's regulated, and after some time, if everything goes well, we'll begin offering these tools to the public, but at the moment they are only used internally.
Last one, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I know we dunked on Excel a little bit, but sometimes I find, especially for execs, the Excel is the best database I can give them, the one that they get the most value out of sometimes. Speaking of which, are you guys, anybody on the panel, can you give us some, or one AI tool that your data teams found to be the best on a cost to ROI ratio that you just integrated as a strategy, or a tool that really gave you the true value for your data?
An example of an AI tool that, I don't want to pick one, but there are a lot of things that are becoming really, really efficient, especially in terms of meeting minutes, in terms of taking notes, in terms of giving you action items and going back. This is something that you needed assistance, you needed somebody note takers, and they have to be good at something, right? Now, because of the NLP and the innovations in NLP and the improvements in NLP, I think that is something that is going to stick, that has already been accepted throughout. There are multiple of them. I don't want to pick one versus another. That comes to mind immediately. And the other things are regular chatbots. Not okay, what is the weather kind of a thing, right? Okay. So there are chatbot integrations that can be done. And they are gaining really, really good traction, where an exec or anyone in the company can go in and ask, hey, here is my revenue, or give me the P&L for the next 3 months, or like give me the P&L for the past 1 year. Or they can just go, give me a trend of like what my inventory is, like, or tell me what my sales will look like in the next 6 months, and let me know if my inventory is on par with that. So those are the kind of questions now you can really ask. And these are going to be like looking at your internal data. They are going to go and like look at your competitors' public data that is available and make a real good decision out of it, or an insight, and give you that insight. The decision is still with people at this point, right? So, but those are the kind of things those are the two things that come to my mind, where like there is a lot of interest whenever people see that, whenever they see, because they see value immediately. That same question used to take like a week to answer. They needed like 3 different people to be there. And those 3 people have to be on their staff to do that. They need to trust them. All of those things are going away, and those are the kind of integrations and those are the kind of tools that are gaining a lot of traction right now.
All right, I think we're at time. Thank you, everyone. And again, if you have more questions, we will be happy to meet you in the back. Thanks again.